There comes a moment in every man's life when the confusion that once clouded his heart finally dissolves and clarity rises within him like a quiet sunrise. A moment where he realizes that understanding female nature is not about blame or bitterness, but about removing illusions that kept him suffering. Because most men grow up believing that loyalty guarantees loyalty, and that effort guarantees commitment, yet life never promised that, and neither did she. And when a man finally recognizes that female nature is fluid, not malicious emotional, not unstable intuitive, not illogical, he begins to see that her shifts are not personal attacks but reflections of her internal world. And when he stops expecting permanence in a world that moves like water, his heart becomes lighter, his expectations become cleaner, his life becomes easier. For the truth is simple: once illusions fall away, you stop trying to control what was never yours to control, and you begin holding yourself instead of holding on to someone who is already drifting away. And this is the beginning of everything you are about to learn, the beginning of clarity, the beginning of emotional freedom, the beginning of seeing people not through fantasy but through truth. And once you enter this mindset, nothing will ever feel the same again. Every man feels the first shift long before he understands it. A quiet change in her energy that moves like a cold breeze through an unseen crack in the window. You sense it in her delayed replies, in the softer tone that used to be warm, in the way her eyes drift away when you speak, in the way her laughter stops reaching you. And though she may not say anything, her soul has already begun stepping back. Yet men pretend not to notice, because noticing forces them to face a truth they are not ready for. But female nature is intuitive, and she senses emotional misalignment long before she can explain it. So her distance is not cruelty but instinct, and the more a man panics, the more she drifts, the more he clings, the more she suffocates, the more he begs for reassurance, the more pressure she feels. However, when a man stands grounded, aware, calm, and unshaken by the shift, he stops feeding the emotional spiral and begins to see what the shift is really signaling. Not the end but the revelation. The wake-up call, the moment where he is invited to see reality as it is rather than what he wishes it to be. And once he accepts this, he gains a level of emotional clarity that will protect him for the rest of his life. This is the chapter that quietly breaks most men, because contradiction is more painful than confrontation. She says she cares but stops showing it. She says she is trying but her effort evaporates. She says she needs time but somehow always has time for everything except you. And men cling to her words while avoiding her actions, because words feel safe and actions feel dangerous. Yet Stoic truth teaches that actions are reality while words are echoes. And when her behavior no longer aligns with her promises, the emotional foundation collapses slowly, silently, and completely. But instead of accepting this, men chase harder, they plead more, they increase effort, hoping it will revive her fading emotion. Not knowing that misalignment cannot be fixed with pressure and decreased interest cannot be revived with desperation. For female nature responds to emotional harmony, not to force. And when a man finally realizes that inconsistency is the universe whispering that it is time to let go, he stops negotiating with detachment and begins choosing self-respect over illusion. And it is in that choice that life suddenly becomes lighter and easier. This is the timestamp where acceptance becomes your greatest ally. Because you cannot hold someone who has emotionally checked out, you cannot inspire someone who no longer feels connection, you cannot fix someone who is running from their own confusion. And men often break themselves trying to revive something that ended long before they acknowledged it. But emotional departure always precedes physical departure, and by the time she steps away from your arms, she already stepped away from you internally. So the moment you stop fighting for what her heart has already released, you step into your true power, not out of anger but out of awareness. For female nature follows emotion, not logic, and when her emotional compass shifts, she follows it without hesitation. And understanding this does not make you cold, it makes you wise, it makes you grounded, it makes you someone who no longer clings to fading affection but instead gravitates toward truth, dignity, and self-alignment. And in that acceptance, you discover a peace that feels like breathing after holding your breath for far too long. This is the chapter of transformation, the rebirth of a man who finally understands that her distance was not an evaluation of his worth but a reflection of her internal state. And when you stop personalizing her emotions, you stop breaking. Every time someone shifts, you stop collapsing. When someone pulls away, you stop questioning your value based on someone else's temporary feelings. For female nature responds to internal storms. You cannot see wounds you did not cause, desires she did not fully understand herself, and once you accept that her actions were not about you but about her emotional wiring, you free yourself from the prison of overthinking and self-doubt. Because men become truly powerful when they stop expecting emotional consistency from someone whose emotions were never static to begin with. And in this clarity you move differently, you speak differently, you love differently, you choose differently, and life becomes easier, not because the world becomes more stable but because your inner world finally becomes grounded, disciplined, and unshakable. And this is where part 1 ends, with a man rising into awareness, strength, and emotional freedom. There comes a point in every man's healing where he realizes that peace is not something he waits for, it is something he creates, and the moment he stops reacting to every emotional shift around him, he begins to feel a quiet power rising inside his chest. A power born from understanding that not every message needs a response, not every mood needs decoding, not every distance needs chasing. Because female nature is emotionally fluid, and when a man finally accepts that her emotional waves are not his responsibility, he stops drowning in waters he was never meant to swim in. And this shift changes everything, because instead of trying to stabilize her storms, he stabilizes himself, and suddenly her silence no longer scares him, her withdrawal no longer weakens him, her confusion no longer defines him. Instead, he becomes the anchor he wished she would be, and from that anchored place, he realizes that peace never depended on another person's consistency, it depended on his ability to detach with grace, accept without collapsing, and choose emotional discipline over emotional chaos. And this is the moment his life begins to move differently, because a man who controls his reactions controls his world. This is the chapter where wisdom finally replaces blame, and the man begins to understand female nature through observation instead of frustration, and through clarity instead of pain. He sees that women move through emotions the way leaves move through wind, never still, always responding to subtle shifts, always adjusting to internal and external signals he cannot always see. And instead of resenting this, he begins appreciating it for what it is: a design, not a flaw; an instinct, not an attack; a natural rhythm, not a personal rejection. And with this understanding, he no longer asks why she changed. Instead, he asks what the change is teaching him about alignment, harmony, timing, and self-worth. He stops expecting her to be the anchor and becomes his own. He stops expecting emotional stability from someone whose strength is emotional expression, not emotional predictability. And as he sees her nature clearly, he realizes she was not meant to guide his stability, but to reflect his growth. And the moment he stops taking her shifts personally, he steps into a new level of inner strength that feels like stepping into sunlight after living in shadows. There is a type of strength that does not roar or rage, it simply chooses to walk away with dignity intact, and this strength emerges only when a man understands that holding on to someone who has already let go is a form of self-abandonment. And when he finally decides to release what is slipping away, he discovers that walking away is not the end, but the beginning of reclaiming himself. He walks away not to win, not to prove anything, not to punish her, but because he refuses to shrink into someone he no longer recognizes, and in that walk he regains his voice, his worth, his clarity, his direction. Female nature often respects distance more than desperation, and the moment a man chooses self-respect over attachment, something inside him recalibrates, his posture changes, his eyes settle, his energy sharpens. He realizes that endings are not failures, they are invitations to return to himself, and in honoring that invitation he steps into a quiet kind of power, the kind that cannot be taken, the kind that cannot be shaken, the kind that grows only when a man finally lets go of what was never meant to stay. A man's silence becomes powerful the moment it stops coming from hurt and starts coming from understanding. Because silence rooted in strength carries a gravity that words cannot match. And when a man stops explaining himself, stops defending himself, stops chasing false closure, and simply stands in silence, he communicates a truth that echoes louder than argument or emotion ever could. His silence tells her that he sees the situation clearly, that he no longer needs validation, that he accepts what is without bargaining for what was, and that he chooses peace over chaos. And in that silence he begins to hear himself again, his intuition, his values, his boundaries, his worth. Silence becomes the space where healing finally breathes, where emotional noise fades, where everything broken inside him begins stitching itself back together. And female nature often notices this shift more than anything because a man who no longer reacts is a man who can no longer be controlled by hope, fantasy, or fear. And this is where he becomes untouchable, not cold, not distant, just deeply aligned with himself. This is the closing moment of your transformation, the moment where everything you have learned settles into your spirit, and you finally see the journey for what it was, not a heartbreak, but an awakening. For when you understand female nature, you stop expecting emotional permanence in a world built on emotional movement. You stop expecting others to validate wounds. You must heal yourself, and you start recognizing that every shift, every silence, every distance was redirecting you back to your own strength. And now you rise differently, you love differently, you choose differently, because you are no longer guided by confusion, you are guided by clarity, discipline, and awareness. You have become the kind of man who does not collapse when someone pulls away, the kind of man who does not chase what is fading, the kind of man who does not measure his worth by someone else's temporary emotions. And as this story ends, your new chapter begins, a chapter where you move as a man who knows himself and therefore cannot be shaken by anyone else. So if this message resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments, watch more Stoic Spark videos to keep elevating your mindset, and make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the daily wisdom your future self will thank you for.